I'm calling this video "Oh My Soap Molds" because I have so many soap molds. I wanted to kind of walk you through some of them today. If you make cold process or hot process or melt and pour soap, this video is for you. If you soap, you probably get a collection of soap molds, or maybe you're just starting off and you haven't quite gotten a collection yet. So I'm going to go over the different type of molds that I have, what works for soap and what doesn't. This is good for cold process or melt and pour, but anything with little tiny cavities like this, I mostly bought for my melt and pour soap, so I could use it as either embeds or decorative tops. Cold process soap is extremely, and I'm imagining hot process as well because that's, I don't even know if you have time to put in a mold like this, but it's extremely hard to get out of those smaller cavities. This works well for both cold process or melt and pour. I like to also put a loofah on these when I use these. Anytime you're using a silicone mold, especially for, I'm talking about cold process soap, you're going to have to wait an extra day or two before you can pull things out of the mold. It just, if you're not using like a true wooden soap mold and you're lining it with parchment paper, it will come out a little bit easier. These were free samples that I got years and years ago from Milky Way molds on some soap supplier that I ordered. The plastic is super, super hard. I didn't do melt and pour at the time that I got these. I've used them maybe once or twice. You really can only use these for melt and pour because they are so hard to get the soaps out. I think it would be good for making chocolates and stuff like that. I'm not really sure. I was not a fan of those, which also though inspired me to look at resin molds, and I ordered some resin molds at one time because I thought that I could fit the melt and pour in there, which you can put them in there, but some of these cavities get a little bit too small and the plastic is really hard to work with, so it can be hard to remove them from the soap mold. This I love for cold process soap, but you can use it for melt and pour as well. These are tall column soaps. They're good for any kind of loaf soap you have, or if you're using like a round soap bar. Usually these are good. The only thing that I would recommend is you have to really press hard to get these completely sealed. Sometimes I use rubber bands to help hold the seal. I will also stand them up in a cup or like a Pringles container so that they stay straight and less of it leaks out. You will get a little bit of leak with these most of the time. I think I've done it once without a leak. If you have a thicker trace with your soap, it won't leak as much. These are like what you would use for cake, for fondant mats. I primarily use these for melt and pour soap. They're nice and thick. They're really easy to get your soap out. The cavities are pretty shallow, so it doesn't take a long time. It does work good too for cold process soap, but obviously cold process you have to wait a while before you can pop it out, usually a day or two. I got these I think on Etsy or somewhere, and they are just little homemade cavity molds. These are macarons. I like the rubber on this. It's super flexible. Again, I would probably mostly use this for melt and pour, but you could use that for cold process. Same with these. I've used it for cold process. I've painted the insides of these and then poured the soap on top, or vice versa. These are stuff that I got like clearance at maybe Joann's or somewhere, Joann Fabrics, and I like the size of these. They're giant. I use them for bath bombs. I also use them for either melt and pour or cold process. I like the larger size for the cold process. Those are a little bit smaller. So some of these are just random. I don't even remember where I got all of these. These are ice cube trays. The silicone on the ice cube trays are a little bit thin. Those are for chocolate bars, which work well. I like to use these little tiny cubes for either samples or color swatches. If I make color blocks with melt and pour, I will use this. Or if I just want to test something out in the soap, a certain color, stuff like that. I also got this mat. I use this primarily for melt and pour. It's great for pouring and layering on the mat. You can layer up on it quite a bit, and then it gives you a nice clean surface where you can just kind of rip basically the scraps of your melt and pour off and then incorporate it into another way into your melt and pour soap. So it's kind of a baking item. This, along with a lot of other random things, I bought a box at Goodwill for like $1. It had all these little impression mats. I don't really know what they're for. I think they're probably for stamps. But I use my teeny tiny 1-pound mold, which by the way, I love the 1-pound mold for test batches, whether it be cold process or melt and pour. But anyways, I stick these little stamp trays. I've cut them down to the size of my mold, and then it's like an impression mat, so it will leave the design on my mold. The thing I love about this 1-pound mold though is it is super, super thick, so it will take a very long time for your soaps to cure. It also, you have to kind of slowly pull away the edges when you pop out the soap, whether it be melt and pour or cold process, and let it break the seal before you could really dump it out. This is also an acrylic soap stamp. I recommend that for cold process soap. These other rubber mats are just, in my opinion, probably too flimsy and thin. I don't know what they're for, maybe clay making or something. So let me know what other creative things that you guys use for soap molds. Really, you can use just about anything for soap mold. I think I built my first soap mold on a little kit that I got from Brambleberry. I used a shoebox and I lined it with a like grocery bag or a trash bag or something like that. Obviously they said that you could do that, but it would look a little bit ugly. So I did it, and that's a good cheap alternative if you are just starting out soap making. You don't need to buy expensive ones. They also sell tons of cheap ones on Amazon. I love these ones on Amazon. They're only a couple bucks. They're good for anybody starting out, whether it be cold process or melt and pour. It makes the little cavity, and it comes with a silicone liner. I highly recommend them. I also used to build my own, so I just went to the hardware store, got some bolts and nuts, and I kind of like made this little makeshift thing. I tried to find the pictures of it, but I don't have it anymore. Maybe you can see it on some of my older videos. But basically, you just kind of chop the pieces of wood down, put the screws in the sides, and line it with parchment paper, and then that's a mold. So you can really use anything in your house to be a mold. I also use Pringles cans, stuff like that. Let me know what you use to make a mold that saves money, or your favorite type of mold. I've also gotten large slab molds. I personally don't have a good use for those. I never have. I don't make a large enough batch of soap most of the time. You can also do different types of design with cold process soap with the slab molds if you're interested in that. So if you have any other questions or comments, leave them down below. I'll try to guide you in what kind of soap molds you need for soap making. Okay, have a great day, guys.